Logan Browning. I have been acting for more than half my life at this point. So 10 years, I'm 20, just kidding. I started acting, like Francis said, when I was 14, and it's been an amazing journey. I've gotten to play really amazing characters, and so that's how I ended up on a really cool show called Dear White People. Through the journey of being on that show, I've learned so much about race, so much about myself, my own identity, which I did not expect jumping onto that show. You know, didn't really think I was going to be facing light skin privilege when I signed that first contract. And it's been a really amazing journey. And now I'm moving on to directing, which is really awesome.
Then I went to the White House. Then I partied in Cape Town. And then when I got back, I got to reenact this Freedom Rides with the original Freedom Riders. So I spent 10 days with the original Freedom Riders, and we went from DC to New Orleans. So we went to like this real big Montgomery, Alabama, with people who were actually beaten in Montgomery. It was just a really very hallowed and special time. And then from them, I learned a lot. The first thing was that they were all 19, 20, 21, 22 years old when they were on this bus. And Dr. King was 26 when he started the bus, when he led the bus boycott in Montgomery. So they were all really young, and they would say things. And then there was one conversation in particular, a man, Bob Singleton, he's a professor at LMU now. We brought him out to Stockton for Black History Month, and we were on the back of the bus, and I'm cracking jokes, and he was just staring at me. So I'm just staring back at him, I'm like, okay, and I'll be good, and be quiet. And then he says, young man, and I said, yes, sir. And he said, I was arrested on August 4th, 1961. Why is that day important? And I said, because you were arrested, and that's important for my freedom. Like, I would not be on this bus if you weren't arrested that day. I heard you, I was listening. And then he laughed, and then he said, on that day, Barack Obama was born. And then he said, I was 19 years old. I had no idea that the decision I made at 19 would pave the way 50 years later for a kid who couldn't get a cup of coffee to become president. And then he said, what are you doing today so that 50 years from now, a kid in Stockton has every opportunity you have? One of my biggest mentors is Marian Wright Elderman. I was able to be in part of a lot of her programs all throughout college, so I would get these just nuggets of wisdom from her. And the biggest one she said was that it's a privilege to struggle for justice. Justice work is like a baton. It's a privilege to be given the mantle to keep the work forward. So I've just learned a lot.
1956 and 1968, aside from President Abraham Lincoln Emancipation Proclamation of 1863, Martin Luther King Jr. may have done more to achieve social, racial, political, and economic justice in America than any other single event or person in the previous 400 years of history of our country. His tough love of nonviolent civil disobedience, Dr. King forced America's conscience to publicly confront the contradiction between the reality of how it treated 12% of its population, African Americans, and those precepts enshrined in our Declaration of Independence.
I would attend Klan rallies and different things. I said this is about 27 years ago. Towards the end of the rally, you can see the burning cross in the background. This one was about almost 4 years ago. The first one was in Maryland, that one is in Missouri, towards the end of a rally. Now, what do I do at these things? I talk to people. I try to learn and understand.
I was on social media, like many of us are, and angry and upset and trying to figure out how to understand what was happening. And I came across a good friend's Facebook post, Alicia Garza, and she wrote Black Lives Matter, and then I put a hashtag on it. And Alicia was like, what's a hashtag? And I was like, it's this thing that can go viral. But I'm also a trained organizer. So I wasn't just interested in an online campaign. I was interested in how we translated Black Lives Matter to the ground and how it really could be a grassroots movement that can bubble up, change the world, change the country. And on July 15th, when we solidified Black Lives Matter as a political project, I wrote on social media again. I said, hey, Alicia and I have started this project called Black Lives Matter, and we hope that it will impact more than we can ever imagine.
We started with the Chicago Defender. Now, many people know, and I don't want to preach to the choir, but the Chicago Defender started in 1904, and it's essential to Black history because as we were freed as slaves, everybody needed to know, people wanted to start migrating away. And the Chicago Defender was different from other newspapers, and they took the initiative to actually start getting these newspapers down south. So they partnered with the Pullman Porters, And the Pullman porters were, in a way to make extra money, they were distributing and selling the papers. When in down south, it was kind of frowned upon for black people to actually even read, let alone get the scoop on where to go.
This time last year, I was in Pyeongchang, South Korea, making history as the first Nigerian to ever compete in the Winter Olympics. I also made history as the first Black and African woman to compete in the sport of skeleton at the Olympics. Now, this all sounds wonderful, but you might be wondering, outside of the amazing pizza that's available at the Olympic Village, and it was very, very good, by the way, why would I, a then 36-year-old, mid-level professional working at the time at one of the world's most recognizable brands, I was working at Nike, with a fancy job title, decide and choose to put all that aside and go on a 100-day journey to pursue the Olympics? Well, for me, it was all about shifting the narrative. And this is super important because this was basically the driving force, the motivating force that led me to do what I did. Shifting the narrative was very important because my journey was inspired by the fact that I discovered that no African or Black woman had ever competed in the sport of skeleton at the Olympics. And I thought, wow, we have over 1 billion people in Africa and there's not been one person.
And so when you're talking about what we can do, I think that we begin to learn when we start to create different institutions, different social, political, economic structures that have different messages about who matters and who doesn't. And so then we start to internalize those messages as opposed to the ones that have been internalized. Everyone, I think, can take part in that in different ways, but I do think that's possible.